know what I do when I have a bad dream? I close my eyes and I think of something nice.
So the film we're talking about today is Triangle. It's a film that was written and directed by Christopher Smith. The basic synopsis is the main character is a woman called Jess, who is the single mother of her young autistic son, who Jess appears from the offset of the film to be troubled, which I think is possibly putting it a little bit lightly. Her character actually says early on that she feels guilty whenever she's not with her son. But anyway, she goes one day she decides to go on a yachting trip, a sailing trip with a group of friends and sort of friends of friends. She was originally going to bring her son with her on the trip, but she turns up and turns out her son is actually at school. Or is he? Well, this is one of the questions of the film. Anyway, everything is all going quite nicely. She's sort of slowly starting to ease up a little bit, sort of relax a little bit, trying to take her mind off the worries of looking after her autistic son, when, out of nowhere, this very violent and very, very sudden storm hits the yacht. Everything goes pear-shaped. One of the people that was on the yacht with her, who's like a friend of a friend, basically, is killed in the storm. And that's not a plot spoiler, because that happens quite early on in the film. Everyone else survives, but the yacht gets upturned, and they're sort of stranded there for a while, when seemingly out of nowhere, sort of through the fog, through the mist, this huge ship, this ocean liner, appears. And of course, this is a great thing. This is sort of their saving grace, and they all board the ship with haste. But it seems that the ship appears to be completely deserted. They don't see or hear anyone for some time, even though they go into the theatre and there are sort of there's foods laid out and there's tables laid out, and it seems like there have been people here very recently, but they can't find or see anyone to get help. But that all changes when they quickly realise that they're not alone, because someone, no one knows who, this sort of masked killer, is hunting them one by one and killing them off one at a time. And things slowly descend into more and more madness, and things get more and more twisted. And I won't spoil anything after that, because I think if you talk much more about the film, it's one of those films that's hard to explain without spoiling it. I definitely don't want to spoil this film. So, what did I think of it? Well, it's a film that I first watched, I think it was in November. I just sort of happened to come across it, really, on the internet, I think. And it's a film that actually really stayed with me for a long time after I watched it. I was really, really blown away by it, actually, the first time I watched it. I thought the film kind of revolves around this central performance by Melissa George as Jess, who I was really impressed with the first time I watched it. And it's one of those kind of films that makes you think a lot, not only while you're watching it, but after you're watching it. It's a film that stays with you for a long time, because it's got a complicated plot, I think is, again, putting it lightly, that has a lot of several themes running through it, and it's not the kind of film you can really watch just once and sort of totally get the whole scope of it and get what it all means and fully appreciate it to its full extent. So it's a film that I the first time I watched it, I wanted to watch it kind of immediately for a second time, but I decided not to. The first time I watched it, as I said, I had no idea what it was about. I didn't really know what to expect, really. I think I'd maybe watched the trailer, and obviously I'd seen the poster. Excuse me. So I knew it was this sort of psychological thriller, sort of horror-ish type film. The film's actually loosely based on an ancient Greek myth, which is referenced quite a few times throughout the film. But I have a feeling that the fact I knew nothing about it kind of made it more enjoyable. And I think if you watch it, you should watch it with an open mind and with a sort of blank canvas, as it were. But yeah, no, this it's a film that stayed with me for a long time, so I decided to watch it again a second time recently, just a few days ago, actually. And I enjoyed it as much, if not more, the second time watching it, because it's one of those films that you can pick up on new things every time you watch it, because of the way because there's multiple big twists towards the sort of third act and the end of the film. And it's one of those things that you pick up on extra details and references throughout the film with every time you watch it, which is great. I really like films that have a lot of sort of replay value, as I like to call it. The film looks great. There's a couple of moments in the film where the whole palette of the film, or of the shot rather, of the scene sort of suddenly drastically changes from this fairly sort of fairly low contrast, quite stark, horror-ish palette to suddenly it goes down into this really dark blues, dark greys, almost kind of underworld-like visual, and that's for a purpose within the film. I won't say anything more about that, but there are those are really fantastic, striking moments in the film. I think Melissa George's central performance is absolutely terrific. I think it was wholly overlooked. It's the kind of performance that requires, again, as I said, more than one viewing of the film to fully appreciate. The second time I watched it, I was really, really blown away by her performance. It's not an easy role to play by any means. The cinematography is great. As I said earlier, there are some really great horror influences in there that the film doesn't try to hide at all, with these sort of long twisting corridor shots that happen at the beginning. Fantastic usage of mirrors, which is one of the big things in the film. There's even a nod to The Shining with the room lumber and all these other things. The soundtrack is really good. There's this chilling main theme, which so it's a sort of a motif that pops up a few times throughout the film. I forget the name of the composer of the soundtrack, but I'll pop an annotation up of that. So yeah, it's a film that I thoroughly enjoyed. Has quickly become one of my favourite films of its genre. The sort of psychological horror / thriller, sort of mind-bending film. It's twisting, it's intelligent, it's engaging, it never gets boring. It revolves around, again, as I said, a terrific central performance by Melissa George. It's a film that challenges you and makes you think constantly, again and again, while you're watching it, and then continues to do that for a long time after you've watched it. It's a fantastic viewing, and I highly recommend it.